I would like to invite Mr. Barry MacKenzie, exhibit curator, to the stand.
There we go. Thank you very much, Alexandra, and thank you to everyone who's here this evening. Your Honor, Ms. Rogers, for being part of our official opening of this exhibit, which has now been here at the Fredericton Region Museum for the last almost 3 weeks. I was thrilled to be part of this project, and I think in my capacity as co-chairman of the New Brunswick branch of the Monarchist League of Canada, I think it's obvious why I was involved in this type of project, but it also speaks to my own research at UNB, where I'm working on a PhD, slowly but surely, on this very topic. And I think part of what captures our imagination is what Ms. Rogers referred to, is the fact that she was, I guess, those photographs make you think of the fact that we've sort of aged along with the Queen. And I think what continues to make monarchy relevant, and what continues to make this sort of topic relevant for me, and I think for those of you that are here to enjoy this opening, is the fact that we've continued to grow along with monarchy as it's continued to evolve in its constitutional capacity in Canada. But the fact that we've continued to grow along with it, and that it's sort of a wonderful snapshot of Canada's development in the last 2 and almost a quarter century. 2 1/4 centuries since this first tour took place in 1794. So for those of you that haven't had a chance to view the exhibit, and I hope that you will take the time afterwards as we mingle and we enjoy the panels that have been so beautifully produced by our designer and by the folks at the print shop. For those of you that haven't had a chance, it's a tale, I guess, of New Brunswick really evolving from colony into nation, into province rather. And it hearkening back to that time, only a decade after New Brunswick had been partitioned from a much larger colony then known as Nova Scotia. Touching on that particular first tour by Prince Edward Augustus, which was so very different from the tour of 2012 when the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall were at CFB Gagetown and in St. John. And looking back at the evolution of how these tours have been carried out, how they were celebrated and commemorated, and how they continue to be celebrated and commemorated today. I think one of the themes that you'll notice throughout the various panels is that the reasons behind, maybe the motivations behind the organization of these tours has changed significantly since 1794. And perhaps that's not surprising, at least it shouldn't be, I suppose. And indeed, at that time, the first royal tour of New Brunswick was very much a military engagement for Prince Edward Augustus, who was then Commander-in-Chief of all the King's forces here in the maritime colonies. And so that sort of evolved as we progressed into the 19th century, when the tours of 1860, those of the late 1860s, 1870s, and right up until 1939, had a great deal to do with those bonds, those very tight bonds with the mother country, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And it had a lot to do with reminding the people of Fredericton, the people of St. John, and all the small communities in between that had the privilege of being visited by members of our royal family over the centuries. It had a lot to do with reminding people of that rich heritage. And there was a great deal surrounding various colonial conflicts and wars and all that sort of thing. 1860 was very much Queen Victoria's reward for so many Canadians, British North Americans, for having contributed to the British success in the Crimean War. The colonial parliaments in Upper and Lower Canada had been very keen to have the Queen herself come to British North America, and of course Queen Victoria would never dream of undertaking such a perilous journey, so instead she sent her eldest son, an heir, to take this very dangerous transatlantic crossing and to tour the colonies, and as some sort of reward, I guess, for all that we've done. And the same sort of thing is carried forward. This is very much what 1901 is all about. And you'll notice in the description of the tour by the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall and York of that year, that there were a number of military themes running through that. Medals were presented, all that sort of stuff to remind New Brunswickers that we had contributed to the so far success of the South African War, and to encourage us to continue to contribute to the success of the South African, the British side of the South African conflict. And that same thing carried through in 1939, when the King and Queen, as much as they were celebrating Canadians, were also very keen to shore up support for what was obviously going to be an international conflict just later on that year. And so what I've noticed in the course of this research is that things have changed significantly since 1939, and that the royal tours that those of us here today, there are some of you, of course, that may remember the royal tour of 1939, but those who remember 1951 and so on will notice that the themes of these visits have changed considerably, and the focus really now is on celebrating New Brunswickers and the successes of New Brunswickers, mourning the tragedies that have taken place within New Brunswick during these many decades. And the same sort of work that His Honour does all the time in recognizing the achievements of New Brunswickers, that's the sort of thing that our Queen and her family have been attempting to do for the last 60 years. And so I think it's significant that this project was undertaken in her Diamond Jubilee year, when the Queen herself was very keen that we should not spend 2012 reflecting on what a wonderful job, solely on what a wonderful job she's done as our sovereign and the sovereign of 15 other nations, but rather to also focus on the service of other people, the service of people like the volunteers that make this museum one of the best community museums in the province and indeed throughout Atlantic Canada. Those types of volunteers, the volunteers that are involved with all sorts of charitable organizations throughout Fredericton and New Brunswick and beyond. And Diamond Jubilee medals, in the same way that medals of merit were presented in royal tours past for generations, have been presented this year to people who have given up their time for various causes. And so for all those reasons, it's been a privilege for me to be involved in this particular project, and to for one thing, I'm very happy that it's really given my PhD research the shot in the arm it needed to sort of get me on track and back on schedule. And my former mentors, Dr. Conrad and Dr. Keeley, will probably be glad to hear that that there's something driving us PhD students as we struggle along the way. And so it was a pleasure to have been invited by Ruth to participate in this, and to really dig deep and to look at the whole gamut of royal tours as they've taken place for 2¼ centuries, to sort of look at them from a wider lens rather than one at a time. And in that sense, one can really pick out the themes that I've been referring to and those sort of colonial connections. And now, of course, royal tours are a very different thing. And there was very little reference made, despite the fact many Union Jacks were being waved when the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall were here just weeks ago. It was all about Canada. It's very much about this country, about our heritage, about our present and our future, about celebrating all the wonderful things that make this country great, and so on and so on, and these many themes of the Diamond Jubilee. So I encourage all of you that are here to take the opportunity to reflect upon these panels and what the significance, perhaps for you, whether you be a monarchist, Republican, or a fence-sitter like so many other New Brunswickers, on the significance of royal tours in your lives. And I always welcome people to share with me what their memories are of these various instances. There are some marvelous stories that circulate in the anecdotal history of all of these things. And I think that's what really defines the magic of monarchy that continues, I think, to be alive today. Because despite the fact that we spend a lot of our time in reading the media and in engaging with the media, reflecting upon all those foibles, the human foibles that are attached with all of this, I don't think we can truly say that any of us, whether we be monarchists or otherwise, can really divide ourselves from the magic that is there. And in the same way, one of the stories that always pops into my mind is a wonderful little anecdote about the 1939 royal tour and the brief stop in Newcastle before the royal party continued on here to Fredericton for official provincial celebrations in June of that year, when an uncle of mine, who's now he's now in his 70s, he was then just a young boy, and he and many other people in the community of Newcastle who didn't feel like fighting the crowds at the train station thought that they would camp out nearby, just outside the town, where they get a great view of the King and Queen as they drove by in their car. And after spending the whole day there very patiently waiting at the home of this very kind neighbor who allowed them to be there, they watched him all day going back and forth, trying to make everyone who came to participate, however fleetingly, in this historic occasion, watching him go back and forth, gathering chairs and benches and providing for these guests, so anxious for his own glimpse. And after all of that, the man of the house, when one person arrived at the last minute, went off inside to get one more chair, and when he came back out, well, the royal party had already gone past, and he had missed the whole thing. And yet that story continues to stand out, I'm sure, in the memories of those in his family, and in those of, and certainly in the mind of my uncle, who continues to enjoy telling that story to this very day. And so I think those very brief sort of things, and for most of us, and for me included, those glimpses and those brushes with royalty are but fleeting. It's for those of us who have had the opportunity to speak at length with him, which we know His Honour has had the opportunity to do in his capacity as the Queen's representative. But for the rest of us, I think perhaps that's what keeps the magic alive, I guess, and what makes it a different form of celebrity. And so I think you'll, to make a long story short, I think that you'll enjoy perusing these panels. At least I certainly hope that you do. And I welcome your comments and your recollections, your own memories of brushes with royalty as they've toured New Brunswick over the last 2¼ centuries. And I'd be remiss if while I was up here briefly, if I didn't take the opportunity to thank Ruth, who may have just slipped back into the museum, but to thank Ruth for her patience, as I, who professed last fall when we talked about this, to never be like the curators who wait till the last minute to get everything in. Of course, I fell into that trap as well, and I do appreciate Ruth's patience for that, and the patience of her staff who were left getting everything together last month in time for the 1st of July. So I'm very grateful to Ruth and to everyone at the museum, to His Honour for his continued patronage of our organization, the New Brunswick Branch of the Monarchist League, as well as the York Sunbury Historical Society, for my ever-patient wife and son, and all those who have, in one way or another. Yes, Ruth missed that, but I was thanking you, Ruth, very much for your patience. It's certainly been my pleasure, and I certainly hope to have the opportunity to work with the York Sunbury Historical Society, of which I'm now a proud member as the years go on and while I'm in Fredericton. And so with that, I thank you very kindly for your attention, and I'd like to ask His Honour the Lieutenant Governor to officially open this exhibit for all to enjoy throughout the province and the rest of this year.